Hi, everybody. It's me, Terry, your ARBA District 8 Director. Yes, it's time for another one of our virtual Youth D8 workshops. And tonight is Cavie Night. And the topic is picking the best, tips for assessing young and pre-junior long hairs. And this is the first time that we've welcomed two speakers from two different locations in the same presentation. So this is a first for us, and we're glad to have both of them. First of all, we have Judge Elizabeth Eisel-Gutcher out of Ontario, and also a registrar, Lisa Pordon from Colorado. And I'd like to remind everybody throughout the presentation, please chime in where you're located. We're always glad to see where our viewers are at. And also type in your questions. Later in the presentation, Amanda at our control center will read these questions off to Elizabeth and Lisa, and you'll get some good answers. And we'll get started right now. Elizabeth and Lisa, it's all yours.
Okay, sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Good to go now?
Yourself?
Okay. Hi, I am Elizabeth Eisel-Gutcher. I am a relatively new ARBA Cavie judge. And I have had pretty good success with long hairs, best of varieties at ARBA Nationals, best in shows, best opposite sexes of breeds at specialties, best in shows just in general shows. And I am with Lisa Pordon as well.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I've been raising cavies for about 14, 15 years, mostly long hairs. I do coronets, Peruvians, and silkies. I get satins occasionally. I don't raise Texels, but I do own and show them every once in a while. So I have a little bit of experience with Texel coat as well. My animals have won quite a few best in shows over a number of years. Yeah. We have the slides. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the first thing we were going to talk about was the terms and the standards as it pertains to our long hairs. I just kind of went through them alphabetically. We have our cheek sweeps, which is a part of the sweeps, which comes in from the cheeks. It blends into the side sweeps. The density is the thickness of the coat. It is important to note that density isn't the thickness of the individual hairs, but the thickness of the number of hairs on the cavie. The finish, it's also a general term for other cavies, but it does come in for long hairs. In coat appearance, especially the desired degree of perfection and condition, a fully primed coat, color or flesh. There is a look of a finished long hair animal. Then we have the frontal, which is focused on Peruvians and Peruvian satins. It's the hair that comes up over the face. And then a gap in coat is where you're missing density, length, just something that comes in and affects the overall coat. The standard particularly mentions density. I do consider it to be a gap in coat though as well, just to have a short area that's been chewed or damaged. Then there's the mane, particularly we're looking at number 2 in the standard for mane. That is the long hair that sweeps back from the crown and joins the rear sweeps. It's in the coronets, your silkies, and your silky satins. And then we have our sweeps, the rear sweep and the side sweep. It's just the part of the coats that either comes to the side or to the rear of the animal. And then the texture, just the way the coat feels, it should be soft and silky, slipping through the fingers effortlessly.
Okay, now we'll talk about the Coronet standard specifically and where the points are. And as you may have guessed, most of the points are on coat. You still want an animal with good type, which is 15 of your points. And then the coat breaks down into density with 10 points, 10 points for texture, 10 points for the mane, and 10 points for side sweeps and 10 points for rear sweeps. And then the coronet itself, oops, the crest here, that is 15 point. And I'll read to you from the part of standard on the coronet itself, because there's been some changes in the new standard. The coronet is a defining characteristic of the breed. It should be positioned so as to accentuate the eyes and never cover them like the frontal on a Peruvian. The coronet rises and arches, radiating evenly from a clearly defined pinpoint center. It is dense, full, and even in its length. Even in its length without overly long sections disturbing its rounded shape. The mature coronet, this guy's not used to being up here. The mature coronet blends into the mane and will at all times maintain a full appearance, never flat, thin, or parted. The coronet is centered on a line running from the tip of the nose to the center of the ears. The center is to be no further forward than the back of the eyes, no further back than the front of the ears. When evaluating the coronet, it should be set up to radiate to its fullest. Do not crush the coronet. And then the faults in the coronet are doubling, guttering, or open center, off center coronet, and an overly long or flat coronet. And DQ is the absence of a coronet. But we'll be going over the coronet in more detail later on and pointing out some good ones and bad ones. So there'll be more. And then we have 10 points on color and condition each.
So the next breeds we have in the standard alphabetically are the Peruvian and the Peruvian satin. This one right here is a young Peruvian satin. Again, the most of the points are on the coat. We've got 65 points on the coat when it comes to both the Peruvian and the Peruvian satin, mostly looking at the density, texture, how the heights, rear sweeps, side sweeps, and frontal develop. The color and condition are also worth 10 points each, and the type is worth 15 points. The Peruvian satin differs a little bit in just the breakdown of the points within the coat. Each thing's only worth 10 points instead of 15, so that it can account for the sheen in the coat. And then we have our Silkie, which also has 65 points based on coat. We have type, 15 points as well. Color and condition are both worth 10 points each. And then each point, again, like the Peruvian, is worth 13 points each.
And then your Silkie satin, the way the points break down, you need to allow 10 points for sheen. So that's going to take away a bit of points from a few of the other areas, but very similar to Silkie otherwise. And then Texel. This guy's a little bit different. We have 15 points for type, 15 points for head specifically, and then 50 points on the coat. We want 10 points for density, 5 for texture. And then the ringlets, the curls in the coat are worth 35 points, and then 10 on color and condition. And we'll go more into how to assess the coat and curls and all that in a little bit.
So the first thing I do when I am assessing a young long hair is I look at the standard, and 65 points in most cases, 50 points for the coronet, I believe, in the Texel, is on the coat. That's over half of your animal just on the coat quality. So that's where I kind of start as a base point when I'm looking at animals. I look at the rest of them as well, but I do just start with the coat. New York newborns and pre-juniors do have a lot of indications and hints as to what their coat might be like as they get older. So certain aspects that you can look at for the coat, and you can look at partially by feeling. You can't see texture in a pig. That's all done by feel. But you can also look and feel at the coat to see where the density is going to be and how the density develops. For example, the front shoulder blades of the Peruvian coat makes up the frontal. So in order to have a nice dense frontal, you want to see a lot of coat and density right in this particular area of that animal. Another indication of the future density is the subtle waves. I'm not sure how well my camera is showing that, but she does have a little bit of wave in her coat.
Can you try that again?
And try it again?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I made you bigger on the screen.
Okay, so I'm not sure how well it shows, but you can see there's just a little bit of wave in the coat. It's not too much, not nearly as much as you'd see in like a Texel, just that little bit of wave or indent. Our next slide also has picture examples that also kind of show it, that might give you an idea if you can't see it on camera. And that's just it's just something that the coat does when there's going to be some density in it. And genetically speaking, I'm not entirely sure why, but if you have a pig that has that little bit of wave to it, it is an indication that you are going to have a good dense coat. Lisa?
Was this one me? Yeah. So one thing that's important in all of the long-haired breeds is the evenness of the sweeps. You want evenness not just in length all the way around, but also in the density. So you're going to have to get in and feel and see if there's any weak spots. Ideally, you want it just to be as dense on one side as the other, in the rear and the frontal on a Peruvian, and the mane on a Silkie and Coronet as well. So on Peruvians, this is a good example of this. You sometimes get weak areas in density kind of over the hips and in the rear sweep. And so this guy is one that's wouldn't see the show table. He's just doesn't have enough density right through here and in his rear sweep. Now when he grows up, this coat here is going to fall back down and be part of the rear sweep, but it still isn't going to have the density you want because he's just thin here. So he's not going to be very even as it is on the sides here. And then another area is through the cheek sweeps here and over the shoulders. So you can see he's a little bit thin there as well. You want this to be nice and full as the sides all the way around. And then his frontal as well, it's a little thin. I don't know if you can see. I just like to see a lot more layers through here. And I want to see a lot of coat up top here and on the Silkies and Coronets as well, because this is all going to come down and be part of the rear sweeps, part of the frontal, and then, like I said, this will go back into the rear sweep. So what's up here is really important. And he's not too bad up top, but if they're thin up here, it's not going to improve because you're just going to have this coat down here and not much to join it and create these nice layers that we want.
And something else you can look at too to assess the density is to look, when you part the hair, how pinpoint is the center where you're parting it at? Because the more pinpoint that is, that means the more density that there is within that coat. So if you just part it, and if you have a part where you look there and you've got your hairs tightly compacted over the shoulders, but then you come back to the rear end and you can see that there's just more gaps between the hairs, that's an indication that maybe the pig isn't going to be fully balanced as it develops.
And one other thing I can point out on this guy too, I tend to get a lot of questions about it, is extra rosettes. Peruvians have to have these rosettes on the rear, which is going to push the coat forward, but they can have rosettes in other spots too. If they're up high, it tends to affect the lay of the coat. And I think he has like a partial rosette up here, but he's got some on the sides too. And in a Peruvian with a really heavy coat, that's really not going to make much difference as the coat grows because it's going to have weight to pull that down. But where he has less density, it's kind of standoffish, and you probably will feel a bit of a gap there if you were to coat him out, just because the hair is being pushed in all directions and it's not going to have as much weight to pull it down. So it's always going to feel a little weaker in those spots. Yeah, and I was just going to say, and then in Coronets and Silkies, I mentioned a bit, we really want to watch the cheek sweeps here and over the shoulders, and then under the mane as well. Sometimes you'll get shorter hairs there, so that's another thing to watch for when you're evaluating your pups. I like to evaluate for coat around 4 weeks, ideally. All right.
So we're just going to quickly kind of show a visual on our slides as well that kind of just shows numbered areas of where to kind of look for, just in case you didn't see it as we're handling the animals. Sometimes it can be really hard to tell where we're at.
Okay, yeah, like I said, over the hips here, that's, you'll see on the slide there. And then along the sides towards the bottom is another area I like to assess that you want it to be nice and full there. And then the cheek sweeps again. And then over the shoulders. And if it's a Silkie or a Coronet, under the mane as well. And then the frontal, for the frontal on a Peruvian, I want it to be really, really dense and like this nice tight fitting cap almost. And you can see lots of layers in the frontal. On a weaker frontal, you see I push his coat back and it doesn't bounce back. It just stays straight up because he doesn't have the weight there and the layers that you really want for a nice heavy frontal. Okay.
So then we have this little bit of a diagram. We each provided a picture. I won't say who provided which one, but may or may not have provided the one on the left. So we're just kind of looking at these coats and seeing where issues might be, where weaknesses might be. And you can just see, particularly right over the top of the shoulders of the animal on the left, it's just dipping down. It lacks the density to hold the hair up. You can see that the cheek sweeps are looking a little weak. And then when you get to the rear, you just don't see that lift that the coat on the right has that indicates a good coat.
You can see on the guy on the left too, what I was just talking about. He doesn't have the weight to his frontal, so it's just gonna want to stand up like that unless you really push it down a bit. So that's, you can compare that to the one on the right where it just fits real tight and you don't have to mess with it. It just wants to lay that way anyway, and there's lots and lots of layers in there. Okay. And then let me grab a coronet. So yeah, and then with the coronets, of course, we want to pay a lot of attention to the coronet itself, which I hope you can see on this guy. And these guys are squirrely because we don't have any shows here right now because of our HD. So none of these have left the house or seen a show or anything at all. So they're a little wild. But you can see on his, he does have, hopefully you can kind of see, he does have a decent pinpoint center there. And you want to see this nice rise and lift. So the coronet should have a nice shape to it. You don't want a flat coronet at all. And you want it to be dense all the way around and evenly dense. And it shouldn't have any longer bits, which you can see he's got a few little antenna. So that's a bit of a fault. But you don't want it to be too stringy. He'll grow into that a little bit. He did at 4 weeks, he did have a nice even coronet. So if they have a bad coronet at 4 weeks, it's never going to improve. If they have a great coronet at 4 weeks, it might develop some of these here and there, but he does have the density and the nice pinpoint center at least. Okay.
So then in our slides, we just provided a quick little similar image to the Peruvian, just kind of pointing out the areas on our silkies, silky satins, and coronets. We have number 1, which specifically points at the area that would eventually develop into the mane. Unfortunately, I don't have a silky with me. It's just that area right over top of the shoulder blades. It's going to become the mane. It's also going to, some of it's going to fall down and become part of the side sweeps. We have number 2, which is our cheek sweep area. That area can be a problem, just not really filling in. Then we have number 3, which is specifically the side sweeps itself. You know, you just want to check and make sure all around that these areas are very dense. And then going into number 4, I think is kind of a particularly important area because that's right at the juncture between the side sweeps and the rear sweeps. And that really I find is an area that can be lacking in some long hairs, maybe partially due to grooming, but just partially due to just a general lack of coat in that area. And then we have a lovely little comparison. So you can see the pig on the right doesn't have the fullness to the cheek sweeps, and just overall, you just see like a flatness to the coat because there's basically no density to it. It's just very there. It just kind of falls. It doesn't have that little bit of lift to the coat that the animal on the right has that shows that little bit of density.
And he also looks like he's narrower in the head too, which doesn't help when they lack cheeks.
Yeah.
That's another
Yeah.
thing to watch for is the width of the head itself. You'll see that sometimes with the high, small ears as well, goes along hand in hand with it to give you a pig that looks like that.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go back to the coronets. I'll show you a baby. There are a couple coronet babies that are 2 to 3 weeks old. These are from 2 different litters. So again, you want to look for, and I don't usually evaluate, especially the coronets at this age until they're weaned, because they are going to be kind of smushed just from nursing, and sometimes they'll split. So it's hard to get a good assessment of that until they're weaned and they're not nursing anymore and doing that. So around 4 weeks is when I like to evaluate the coronets and the coat. Again, you want a nice pinpoint center. Shouldn't be any splitting or guttering here at all in the front. And you want to look for nice even density all the way around. And then the back of the coronet here is going to blend into your mane as he gets older. So you want that to have a nice transition. And then just look for evenness and length. Right now, I mean, we're not seeing any straggly bits. This guy too, and they both have nice shape to their coronets so far. You can see it's not just flat on the head. There's like this lift like this. My friend and I say like a really good coronet, like you can almost pour water into it and it'll hold water. It's nice and tight. and thick. So you want it to look like it might be able to hold water. So if it's flat and stringy at this point, it's not going to improve. And this guy too, he's got a nice coronet. It looks like he's going to have a nice coronet. I like the density in this. It's nice and dense all the way around. I think we have some slides coming up that show some not so great coronets. Yeah, it's actually that one there is the boar I had out a minute ago, and he's got a few of the little stringy bits coming in, but you can see at 4 weeks he did not have those. So again, they can develop issues further down, but like I said, if they're not good at 4 weeks, they're not going to see improvement, but they could elongate in some areas. It's just something to watch as they grow. And you can see these guys. The one kind of looks like he has antenna, we call them. They look like little Martians. But so that's one fault. And then the second from the left, he almost looks like he has a frontal. He wants to have a frontal. It's very long and heavy. And that's the change in the latest standard, that you don't want it to obscure the eyes like that. It should not have anything resembling the frontal a Peruvian has. It should be nice and tidy. And I mean, not super short, but you want it to be in balance with the rest of the coat and the animal. And then the third one, he looks like he has a nice pinpoint center, but just a little long in parts and not even in length all the way around. And then I think the next slide has some babies. Yeah, so the one on the left is a coronet that I really, really liked. You can see she's got a nice pinpoint center. And because she's a goodie, you can see the tips. And so you can see how much density she has in the coronet all the way around. And it's so round and even. Coronet should be round. You don't want a coronet with corners, which some of them can tend to have. You see the one in the middle is really bad. I think that's probably the worst coronet I've ever seen. That's just not just guttered, but it almost looks like a keyhole. And then it's just really elongated. It's weak in areas. So that's just not a pretty coronet at all. And then the one on the right, it's long, it's uneven, and it's lacking in density. So you can compare that to the one on the left. Those animals are approximately the same age. So that's quite a difference. Okay. Now we'll move on to Texels, and unfortunately I don't have any baby Texels to show you. I only have a couple older breeding animals who are not in pretty coat right now at all. This is when Texels finished their show career. They don't have those nice curls in that anymore. So as we go back to what we looked at the standard before, they have lots of points on their ringlets and curls, and so they're a little different to evaluate than the long-haired breeds. So just like the other breeds, though, we want to check for overall density and evenness of the coat. So even with the curls, you want to see a lot of density to the coat. You want to be able to feel nice thick coat, and it should be even all the way around. You don't want some areas longer than others. A nice Texel should look very round. They have a cobby body, so they should be nice and round. And then if we're evaluating young Texels, we're looking for evenness of curl. You don't want to see some areas that are flat or straight, others that are curly. And a lot of Texels tend to have issues over the crown and into the shoulders and the cheek sweeps. They get kind of wiry hair, and it breaks easily, and it can be straight there, where ideally you want to see curls all throughout that area. And then the other thing to check for on a young Texel is that they have good belly curl, because that is a DQ if there is no belly curl, it's just straight. All right. So there's a couple examples. I think the one on the left is a little younger. I think the one on the right was about 4 weeks when that photo was taken. You can see how round he looks, right up through the cheek sweeps, and everything. He's nice and even all the way around.
Yeah, I think the one on the left is about 3 weeks at that point.
Yeah.
came out of Peruvians, and you can just really see that there's just a lack of curl. It's almost more wavy at this point. And if you look at the belly curl on young Texels too, that belly curl can also indicate the amount of curl that a little Texel is going to have as it grows up. The curlier the belly curl as a baby, it seems to correlate to a curlier coat as they get older.
Yeah, by about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you want to see the start of those little ringlets. So it won't look just wavy all over. You'll actually see the curls developing, and then it's kind of cool to watch it progress. Okay.
So something that comes up sometimes is like, as the coat develops, it may appear to have layers within it, particularly on the side sweeps. You see this, and sometimes you'll look at that pig and be like, did you chew? But if you look really closely, you can see, well, no, they didn't chew. And that is particularly evident when you have an agouti that still has the tips, or a solid that has the tips. And this layering in young intermediate age coats and older junior coats is a really good indication of density, because you really don't see that layering effect in pigs or animals that just don't have the density to their coat.
Yeah, you can kind of see on this guy a little bit. I don't know if it'll pick up his tips because he is an agouti. So it almost looks like Liz was saying, that you can see some of the coat up here looks shorter, but you can see he still has the tips. And even on a non-agouti, you can kind of see the baby tips of the coat, even if it's a self color. The baby tips just have a kind of a different look to them than if they've been cut or chewed. So all these, this is all going to grow down and all become part of the sweep. So it'll just keep joining as the animal grows more and more and more. And then you get these layers all eventually blending into the finished coat.
In our next slide, we also provided picture demonstrations of the layering. 3 different examples. We have 2 Peruvians and a coronet. And I'm not sure, well, yeah, that's a different coronet, because the one in the pictures, the with chocolate.
Yeah, this guy's chocolate too, but that's a different one.
Yeah. And you can just see that layering look. It particularly shows up on the white pig. You might think, or the pig with the white side, I guess I should say, is you might think that's chew, but it's not. It's just layers of coat falling down through the sides of the coat.
So I could say one more thing that's kind of related to that is as the animal grows, you want to make sure you keep the bedding really dry and clean, or else these bottom layers are going to break off. And then you're just going to end up with like this curtain of hair over all these shorter bits underneath. So it's really important to protect the bottom coat as well, especially on younger animals before they're old enough to really need to be wrapped or anything. It's just preservation of those bottom layers as well. And then you can have that nice density that the animal was meant to have.
Then we just kind of did picture demonstrations. This pig in particular was my ARBA Best of Variety at the 2019 Reno convention. He was Best of Variety broken and was highly considered for Best of Breed, and ended up going to the eventual reserve and show, winning TSW for. And you can just see as he's little, just the way the coat's laying, particularly in that second picture, you can just really see that frontal starting to push. And then you go to the next and you just see more and more as he grows into his coat. He went through some horribly awkward stages through his development. And in the last picture there, it was at the Reno show. He was about 8 months old at that point. And by then the sweeps were pretty balanced, and you could just see the thickness to the frontal all the way around.
And especially on Peruvians, the coat can go through some awkward stages as they grow and as their bodies grow. So don't give up if it starts looking really funky for a while, as long as you can still feel the density in there. Just let it grow and see what it does. And you can kind of see in Liz's pictures there how the finished product compared to when he's younger, where the coats just kind of want to flip up in some places and not others. So don't worry too much about that on younger animals. I said if the density is there and he had promised as a youngster, it's worth just keep going, see what happens. It'll probably turn out okay.
Yeah. And they definitely can go through a lot of really awkward stages to make you question why you're still going.
Yeah.
There's been a few times where I think both of us have almost pulled the scissors
Or have.
on that ended, or have pulled the scissors, yeah, on something that ended up being really, really nice.
Sure, yeah.
And then we also have a Silkie as well.
Yep. That one, I think first picture is maybe two weeks, and then about 4 weeks, I think, and then 3 months, and then 4 to 5 months, I think. That's all this thing go. So you can kind of see the layers in her coat there too, especially in the second picture. It's bright. You can
Yeah.
see it coming in. She ended up with a nice, thick, full coat.
And we just kind of wanted to say too that these things can be helpful, but a lot can change. Just because a pig doesn't have layering or doesn't have waves, it doesn't mean that they're going to be valueless as a show pig. They're just indications. Not every pig with good qualities is going to have all of these things. They're just things to look out for. And when it comes to long hairs, picking the right pig is just half your battle, because then you still have to coat it. And that can be a chore.
I think that's about it. Are there any questions or anything? No.
Okay, I want to say thank you to both Elizabeth and Lisa. Awesome job, and first time we've ever went back and forth between two speakers, so thought it worked out pretty well. Thank you very much there.
In between slides.
I'm sorry, what's that?
In between speakers and slides.
Yes, yes. And as they said, we're open to questions right now. Of course, we ask everybody to please chime in where they're located and to also ask their questions. So Amanda, it's after you now. Can you tell us who all's listening and watching and what those questions might be?
All right, so far I have no questions, but I've got people chiming in from Georgia, Michigan. One of our speakers was watching. Let's see here. I've got Mama Eisel. We have Zanesville, Ohio, Casper, Wyoming. Then we have Ontario, and I believe we have an Ohio watching there, as well as Indiana. So that's what I have right this moment.
Okay, I might have one question. This is totally off topic to what you're talking about, but the few times when I've been in a position to judge guinea pigs, I know we rabbit judges complain about sometimes reading the tattoos in the left ear, but do you have any recommendations on reading those little bitty ear tags? I gotta admit, I had some trouble.
Yeah.
Well, my mom has a handy dandy magnifying glass that has a light as well, and that can be really handy. A lot of the times it really does come down to the lighting. If you get certain lights, like the the fluorescent bulbs, sometimes it can be really, 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 really hard to read those tags.
Yeah, some of the numbers are worse than others too, just the way they're etched, I guess. So it'd be really hard to tell one from another.
And the ones that like go around the bend where like there's like
Oh, yeah.
letters, numbers on the bend or even on the other side. That's something that a lot of people miss, I guess I'd say, is either when they're entering or as a judge, that, you know, they might enter that their peg is 1, 2, 3. But if you look at the other side of the tag, it's AD 1, 2, 3. And, you know, it was missed as an on the entry as AD 1, 2, 3. It's just entered as 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, I know these tags is little, but I really never realized until I judged them, like, holy moly, and I complain about your numbers sometime. Wow. So, Amanda, has anybody else chimed in with questions or locations?
Just Mary Lou chimed in and said that she uses a 10 times magnifying glass.
Oh. I thought my nearsightedness had gotten so much worse, but no, if much I'll have to. Anything else, Amanda?
We have someone that just chimed in that said that they were watching in from North Carolina.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I tell you, let me cover a few more things here, then we'll bounce back and see if there's any questions. I know sometimes when you cover some topics so in depth, it answers everything. There's no questions to ask, but we'll give it a few seconds. A few things I did want to cover toward the end was, of course, our YouTube channel. For those of us watching this, please help spread the word. District 8 does have a YouTube channel with some all the previous virtual workshops that we've done, and is located there. Tonight's workshop, give Amanda, our tech manager, a few days, it'll be on there. And then a handful of our live events that we did before we went virtual, they're also there as well. The YouTube channel is called ARBA D8 website, ARBA D8 website. And please, it's totally free, open to everybody, just not District 8. Everyone's welcome to check them out. That's what they're there for. Also did want to touch base a little bit on our District 8 website. You know, that's always been one of the things that we've been proud here in District 8 is an in-depth website. And to be honest, it hasn't been updated for a while. Our webmaster simply has been swamped, 2 jobs, computer problems, and, you know, haywire this world is right now. But she has been working on it. Just got a text from her earlier this evening, and things should be updated very, very soon. And of course, we'll help get the word out here on Facebook when that's done. But hopefully it's just not some updates. It's really almost a redesigned website that she's working on. And I think from what I hear, it'll be really nice once it gets up there. The one thing that has hurt us some is we haven't been able to get the show flyers up there like we have in the past. But since I've become aware of that, we've been putting them on the District 8 Facebook page to make sure they still get, you know, publicity, because free publicity is something that doesn't happen a lot these days. So as soon as the website is back up and running, of course, the flyers will be going back on there, and we'll stop doing it on the Facebook and putting back everything on the website. But I encourage all clubs that's planning shows in the coming months, please continue submitting your show flyers. And if they're not on the website, they'll get on Facebook. Just include me on the email when you send them to the website. And I'm assured we're going to have something super in a while. And knowing our webmaster, I'm sure it will be. I also wanted to give a shout out to another group that does something similar to what we do here. And that's Bryony Smith and Alan Messick. They have a podcast called the Best in Show podcast. And a while back, Bryony approached me about Amanda and I coming on there and being interviewed and talking about what we're doing now, the workshops. So last Thursday, we did the interview, and then this week on Monday, it went live. So I definitely want to say thank you to Bryony and Alan for coming and doing a little nice stuff on District 8, what we're doing here. So I want to thank them and encourage everybody to try and check out the Best in Show podcast. They've got a number of other events and more of them coming up. So please check that out. I think that's just about it. Now, Amanda, has anything else chimed in or any more questions?
I do have a question that did come in. Somebody did chime in and say that they were from Alabama. But while you're on the discussion of the YouTube channel, I did bring the YouTube channel up. And basically we have it categorized by Cavies, rabbit breeds, and general general rabbits in general. So, hold on a second here. So you can go in here and you can click the different breeds, and it's categorized by that for when you go to our YouTube channel. I thought I was gonna be able to show you some other stuff, but it's gonna play things for me, so I'm not gonna do that. But as far as our questions go, we have a question here that it says, do you find that certain colors carry more density, for examples, goodies and brokens?
No and yes in the same way. A lot of it depends on whether or not people are putting the effort into improving the coat. And generally what you're finding in brokens in particular is that your black and whites, your goodie and whites, your TSWs are the better animals. They're just more worked on. They're more developed. It's something that I'm actually working on myself. Is I'm working on a cream broken long hair program actively for like 5 years. It's just putting the effort into those other colors. But like right now, if you're gonna put a TSW on the table and a cream and white or a lilac and white, your TSW probably has a better coat, just because it's a more established, more worked on variety, at least as I've found.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when people get into the fun colors, they're more likely to pick up stock that they get it just because it's that color, and tend to overlook the things we want, like density and that. So they're kind of more of a work in progress. You do see different types of texture. Some are definitely more fine in texture. And that, like the hair shaft itself seems to be smaller. And those can feel really nice, but they can also be more difficult to manage because they want to felt a little bit sometimes. So you'll definitely see some differences in texture and that can, I don't know, I see it a lot with the ones that have a finer coat. It seems like it's the whiter areas that are harder to deal with because they just want to felt more, so they might need to be rewrapped every day instead of every other day, sort of thing. So yeah, there's a little bit of a variety.
And something else to note too is like, while cream and white or cream brokens in general in Peruvians isn't exactly super established, there's quite a few cases of cream and white Texels doing very well, because in Texels, the cream and whites have been developed quite a bit more.
And it probably depends on the area of the country you're into. Some parts of the country that you're going to have stronger, certain colors are going to be more popular. So you'll see better coats on those, whereas it might be the opposite on the other side of the country.
Yes.
And just a question in there, when you were talking, you mentioned TSWs. For the inexperienced Cavie person, can you explain what that is?
A TSW is just a specific color pattern, black, red, and white.
Tortoiseshell.
For whatever reason, when the colors were split up, black, red, and white kind of got put in their own little parties, and everything else got basically put together otherwise. which are all considered to be broken colors.
Right, so any of your other tricolors, if they're not black, red, and white, they're shown as brokens and not TSW tortoiseshell.
And if they're not black and white, because you can have a lilac and red, or lilac and Rio, sorry, broken color, but only the black and red is singled out as tortoiseshell.
Yeah.
Okay, Amanda, anything else?
I do not have anything at this time.
Okay, looking out at our future events, we're working on more right now. I don't have any ready to announce right now. I'm very happy to say there's one speaker I've been trying to get for a very long time, and we just got the thumbs up today. I don't want to announce it yet because we don't have the topic and the date and all that nailed down yet, but as soon as we get something ironed out here, we'll be putting it out there on the D8 Facebook page, and I'm really looking forward to this one. We got some other things that coming up too that I'm pretty excited about. So please, we ask everybody to check back often to our Facebook page, and hopefully we'll have some more stuff to announce very soon. You know, I want to give a shout out to my D8 web team that consists of Amanda Behe and Jane Burt. Amanda is over in Western Ohio. She's at the control center right now. She has, I think, about 3 or 4 computers and her phone in front of her. It looks like a NASA control center. Besides doing these for District 8, she also has been doing these same things for 4-H Club. And also a few days before the, a few days after or before we go live with these, we also get with the speakers in most cases and just do a walkthrough to make sure everything looks good. So Amanda puts a lot of time in this. And I'm kind of the, you might say, the source person. I go out and get our speakers, get the topics, and then we work together to put it all together. The other half of our web team is Jane Bird up in Michigan. She serves both as our webmaster and our newsletter editor. And as we said a few minutes ago, Jane's hard at work getting the website back up. And like I said, knowing Jane is going to be awesome. And once that happens, we're going to start getting the District 8 newsletter back out. That's something that we kind of got away from for a while. But once the website's back up, that'll free things up, and we'll get back to doing the newsletter just as soon as possible. I won't promise a date, but we're looking at it very, very soon. And of course, I want to also thank our speakers this evening, Elizabeth and Lisa. Thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate your time and passing on your knowledge, and really, really appreciate it. And of course, we want to thank our viewers out there. Yes, you're the reason we do this. When we started these, you know, we was doing this mainly for our District 8 youth, but everyone else is involved. And now that we've gone virtual, you know, it's just awesome seeing this. We've been fortunate to see some speakers, some viewers worldwide. We've been having some people from Indonesia and the other Asian countries stopping in quite often. I've noticed Mexico, and we've had Australia, Japan, and I think some other countries out there. I'm sorry, my mind's just not thinking of all of them right now. But what I'm trying to say is thank you very much for joining us here, and we really appreciate it. Before we sign off, Amanda, has anything else come on?
Negative.
Okay, Elizabeth or Lisa, any closing comments you guys would like to make?
Nothing I can think of. I do run a Facebook group for people who are interested in showing and breeding. It's not necessarily for beginners, but a lot of stuff that's just kind of the next step. It's called Cavies Learning Group. So if anybody wants to join that, you're welcome to.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's something very worthwhile. Elizabeth, anything on your end?
You're on mute.
Okay, well, Mama Eisel, your daughter did fine. Okay, my friends, thank you again. And please check back in often and hoping we'll have something very soon for you. Take care, my friends, and bye-bye.
Yeah,